This is a sponsored video because we've got to save up money for our studio. And today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. So as you all may know, YouTube is my livelihood. So you might wonder, gosh, wouldn't it be so catastrophic if their channel got hacked and they completely lost access to it or something like that? The answer is yes. It would be extremely bad if I were, say, working on a video script and then suddenly kicked out of the document I was working on because I've suddenly lost access to my Google account. That doubles as my YouTube account. You could say that would be pretty bad. And looking back, maybe that wouldn't have happened if I had had a proper VPN in place. So from this point on, I'm trusting NordVPN to be the one to keep me safe. Their threat protection feature stays active regardless of if I'm connected to a VPN. So if someone were to launch a DDoS attack against me, NordVPN would hide my IP address from the people trying to get a hold of it and prevent them from disrupting my internet. The VPN servers would be the ones to handle it. I might be none the wiser. It also would have been helpful to have Nord on my phone because not a week later, my Twitter was also hacked. It will be now though, since NordVPN lets you register up to 6 separate devices. I can just go clickety-clack on my keyboard and crypto bros can't get me now. I'm in
France.
Baby, suck it. Right now you can get a 2-year plan at a huge discount, plus 4 additional months for free when you use my link, nordvpn.com/GinjaNinja. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/GinjaNinja, or click the link in the description below. And now, on with the video. This was supposed to be an easy video. I did a video critiquing and redesigning the Galar Pokedex when it came out, and that video did pretty well. Now there's a new Pokedex out, and people are asking if I'm gonna do it again for Paldea. Far be it from me to refuse an easy video idea. But I ended up going on a bit of an unexpected emotional journey. It started with the leaks before the game came out. I keep up with leaks. All of these designs were revealed early, and I did not like most of them, which initially reinforced to me that this redesign video was a good idea and that I should go through with it. But the more I thought about it, I started to feel anxious, and it was hard to figure out why. Then other people start reacting to these leaks being out, and I get to see all of everyone else's responses, and I was surprised how many people liked some designs that I personally really didn't. Personally. I think it's probably easy for us as humans to kind of assume our opinion is part of the majority until we hear otherwise. And this brought to mind the fabled Pokemon cycle, where something new comes out, everyone hates it, and by the time the next game comes out, everyone holds the previous game up on a pedestal and rewrites history to say they always liked it. I have my doubts that the cycle truly exists. That's mostly besides the point though, because even if I doubt that it exists the way it's presented, I am aware of it and aware of people's feelings about it. And I wanted to self-reflect. I wanted to consider, am I contributing to this? Am I being a hater? So I did 2 things. I resolved to play the game first using exclusively new Pokemon and all of the new Pokemon to up my exposure and see if they grew on me, see if I was being a little hasty. And I opened a poll so I could see the general trends and how other Pokemon fans felt about the designs. I could get a scope of their overall reception versus how I received them. And while playing the game and thinking hard on what about this video was making me anxious, reading through the responses I got, I came to a couple different conclusions. One was that between the Galar video and this one, I've gotten a lot more serious about learning to design Fakemon. And I'd like to sort of disavow that Galar video now. You know, I didn't even try to draw in the official Pokemon style. I didn't really pay attention to Pokemon's designs principles like I thought I did. I think overall I executed that video poorly. And since continuing to pursue Fakemon design, I've gained an appreciation for how difficult designing Pokemon is, as well as how hard it is to make designs that such a wide audience will all be happy with. I've mostly gotten really sweet feedback on my designs so far, but I suspect should my designs ever be passed off or confused with legitimate leaks, that I would be in for the humbling of a lifetime by strangers. 2 is that I think Pokemon's design conventions are evolving. I can see the through lines from the Galar Pokedex to Paldea, and honestly, I don't think it's really for me. After playing with them all, I still feel like even some of my favorite new designs looked out of place next to older Pokemon. A lot of them didn't really grow on me the way I hoped they would. And that part, at least, will be remedied over time as we get more and more generations that follow this change in formula. One day, there will be enough of them that they won't stand out. This direction just isn't my favorite, which sucks for me, but that's my problem, and I am very aware of that's a me thing, so that's fine. And with these two revelations combined, I realized that I didn't feel comfortable redesigning the Paldea Pokédex right now because I feel like a student. I'm trying to learn how to replicate this style, a style that is currently evolving, and letting my personal preferences take the wheel would be counterproductive, I think. I think redesign videos are fun. I don't think there's anything wrong with them, but as the quote-unquote student right now, I would rather continue learning than risk my hubris acting like I can fix designs that I personally deem bad again. Sorry, Galar. Still not the biggest fan of you, but I accept you. However, with my poll results, I have a different learning opportunity here, where I can focus on learning what Pokemon fans want out of Pokemon designs, rather than just what does or doesn't make for a convincing Fakemon design overall. So what I've done is I've given every Pokemon a grade based on their results. The voting options that I had in response to every Pokemon were, I love it, I like it but it looks out of place, I am completely neutral, I don't like it, it's just not for me, and I don't like it and I don't think it looks like a Pokemon. In hindsight, I should have labeled this first one as just I like it because I think I confused people. It was supposed to be just the general answer for liking a design. I specified that at the beginning of the poll, but I think a lot of people kind of skipped over that. That might have skewed results a tiny bit. Another thing to keep in mind is that while I had almost 4,000 total votes, huge turnout, I only really got to poll the overlap of Pokemon fans in my active audience. So there might be a bias for designs that appeal specifically to people who would like my art, maybe? On top of just being a very small sample pool compared to the 10 million copies that sold in the first week. But back to the results. Each answer was assigned a point value, and I used this to scale how successful a design was overall. Here's how the points were assigned. +2 for completely liking it, +1 point for liking it even if they thought it looked a little strange, 0 for neutral, -1 for just not liking it personally, and -2 for not liking it and thinking it's out of place. I thought this was a generally fair way to go about it. This is the first poll I've done of this kind though, so maybe I can do better in the future. Feel free to argue your point in the comments below. These points were weighed against the final percentages of votes, and we came out with a grading system where 200 points is a perfect score and -200 points is a critical failure. So instead of just redesigning Pokemon that I don't like, I'm going to redo every Pokemon that got below a grade of 28. Because this correlates to the star system that we were going to be using, that we were just going to yoink from the Terra Raid star thingies. And then I used the most common feedback that was provided by voters in the short answer section to determine how the Pokemon could have been redesigned to make it more palatable to the wider Pokemon audience. So hopefully that all made sense. Let's get to the results. In order to keep this video a reasonable length, I won't break down everyone's thoughts on every single new Pokemon design. And for the sake of video flow, I'm gonna break the video into 4 parts, so I can speak uninterrupted for short bursts of time, and then redesign the Pokemon that fell on a 4-star rating or lower between those bursts. The process that I ended up taking with this video was I took my initial results from that first poll, I got all the grading done, I found all of the Pokemon that I would be redesigning, and then I started looking at the responses, the short answer responses of just those Pokemon to see if I could find any common thoughts about the design. You know, what people liked, what they didn't like. I gauged for myself what I thought the most frequent feedback was, and those were the thoughts that I used to base my first drafts on. Then I started to feel like because most people only really use the short answer section to elaborate on their complaints, that I didn't have an actual picture of what everybody liked. I really tend to sweat the little details, I'm really good at that. So I did a follow-up Google forum poll thing with just the Pokemon I would be redesigning. And that time, I asked everyone to fill out short answer questions on what they did and didn't like. So that way I could compare the frequency between answers. For example, you've already seen Crocalor got 4 stars and thus will be redesigned. From the initial poll results, I saw a lot of complaints about the pattern on his face. But in the follow-up poll, I had way more people who liked the face pattern than didn't. So this gave me a much more accurate view on how to make these designs something that a wider audience could at least tolerate, if not appreciate. And then finally what I did was some of the designs that I was still struggling with after reading all those results and doing my drafts for them, I went to my Patreon chat in my Discord server and I posted those designs and asked for feedback. And my patrons and I would shoot ideas back and forth, and I would send updated drafts until we found something that, from what I could tell, most people enjoyed. This was by far the smallest group of people that I got to poll on their reception of the redesigns, so inherently, we could all be very biased. But this is an imperfect process, and I'm working with what I've got. Now, if this method of going by popular vote was efficient or even necessarily good is a whole other topic. We will come back to that talking point later though. For now, I've got Crocalor, Quaxwell, Quaquaval, and Squawkabilly. Real quick, actually, this video is so hard to script because I'm trying to be concise, but there's so much to say. I got over 4,000 responses in total. I have so much data on people's opinions and all these fuckers and my own thoughts and discoveries while drawing that I want to talk about, but I'm gonna do my best. Okay, starting with Crocalor, the hat. The hat was by far the most contentious part of this design because it's simultaneously everybody's favorite part of the design and everybody's least favorite part. Some of the people who didn't like it really just didn't know what they were looking at. But the other thing is that Fuecoco's line and Crocalor's hat, they're all very Mexican. Crocalor has a mariachi thing going on, there's a calavera theme with the whole line. Mexico is not Spain. Very opposite sides of the globe, actually. Personally, this isn't a design I would choose to make, but I'm trying to keep these redesigns strictly about the design. I'm not trying to change the ingrained concepts. And the people had cast their vote for the hat to stay anyway. Other complaints that I saw, that Crocalor's body shape was weird, and similarly that the body shape didn't transition well between Fuecoco and Skeledirge, that he was too goofy in a bad way and not goofy enough in a good way. Lots of people thought the stripes on his belly looked cluttered and confusing, and that the tail getting so thin at the end was gross. I landed on 3 different drafts that I thought might best address these issues, and according to my patrons, everyone liked the design of the top one the best, but the body of the bottom right guy who was crouching down the most. And considering the design on the top guy was all on his tummy, it wouldn't really mesh well if I just gave it to the other body type that's down on all fours. My breakthrough with the best way to combine those aspects finally came when I realized that maybe, instead of just rendering this Pokemon in my Mimic official render style, that I should also be making the pose of my redesign similar to the pose in actual render art. Kinda like you see between a lot of regional variants. That way my much more minute changes to proportion and shape and such would look a lot more intentional than like a style difference. This worked pretty well for Crocalor, mainly because I could solve the problem of bipedal versus quadrupedal by exaggerating this pose a little bit to make him look like a quadruped that's just like, happy to see you, and did a little jump while running over to say hi. The problem with this strategy, though, is that at the time that this video was filmed and edited, Paldea's Pokemon's official renders hadn't been released yet. The official art that we had seen were washed out in low-quality scans, so I couldn't see the colors quite right or the smaller details. I have no idea how they stylized the fire in his nest or if it's just a gradient. I had to guess. I had to guess on a lot of these. Just had to guess what the render art might look like. But for Crocalor, I think it worked out. Next are Quaxwell and Quaquaval. These were interesting for me because upon seeing the leaks, my initial reaction to Quaquaval was a violently negative knee-jerk one. And then we started seeing videos of how he was dancing and prancing around, and now I love everything about him and his big fucking butt. So when he came up as one of the Pokemon for me to redesign, I was real worried because now there isn't really much that I would change about him if it was my choice. I suppose that's what makes this such an interesting exercise, though. I'm working in a way that's supposed to be entirely based on other people's opinion, not my own. I'm supposed to get that different perspective. Help me come out of my comfort zone a tad. On Quaxwell, people really didn't like the shape of his hair, but most of the complaints about both Quaxwell and Quaquaval were that they were too human, people didn't like the legs, they didn't like the feet, and a lot of people actually took issue with the colors, saying that they got too dark or saturated and that people wished that they'd stuck more with Quaxly's teal. Everything else, not a problem. I can adjust the hair and the lower bodies, no issue. Those are pretty minor. But the colors really stumped me, because Quaquaval is like a Brazilian dancer, and that energy would be really hard to capture if he was all white and teal. I ended up taking my drafts to the Patreon chat, and we spent ages going over colors together before we settled on 2 different palettes. One that was more teal and one that was slightly desaturated shades of the original color scheme. I figured this was a good compromise because I was struggling with this teal design. This part was really fun. I think especially because I was confused on what people wanted with the teal design. I was trying to make a design that I didn't like work, which led to some questionable choices on my end. Never forget Blonde Katrina. Like, I think teal on Quaxwell looks fine, but with this one, a simple recolor felt like it completely lost focus. Adding darker colors to it to try and bring the focus back felt super awkward. It was clunky. It was a process. I think he turned out pretty good, though. Thank you to my patrons, because I don't think I would have found myself at this result had I been on my own. Next one up for redesign is Spidops, the first character on our list to get only 3 stars. There's only one other Pokemon that got that low of a score. Have fun guessing which it'll be. Spidops presented an interesting challenge because he was the first Pokemon I was redesigning where the changes people wanted the most were ones that I felt were conceptually baked in that I couldn't really change. Spidops is clearly based on an ogre spider. And in the real world, ogre spiders do, put their legs together the way that Spidops does. They couple them up. And they also have really long abdomens, like Spidops have that they made into this spool of thread that they sport. So while a majority of the comments, things like people thinking it looked too human, not liking the colors, or the pool noodle appendages, those were all things I could easily touch. People wishing that Spidops stayed round like Tarantula was something that was a lot harder to address. I did play with the shapes a bit, but ultimately I kept him pretty long, hopefully just in a way that people maybe like a little more, maybe. I made his arms into sewing needles instead of whatever those cylinders were before. I'll be honest, my final Spidops is not my favorite. I'm willing to live with the consequences of this being my final design, though. Do you like this better? Worse? Let me know. Squawkabilly was super easy. He was one that I was really hoping I would get to redesign. I already had an idea for him. I lucked out that my fellow Squawkabilly haters are out there. This guy already has a jacket. He already has a jacket, and only having black on his hair is so weird and out of place. The jacket, make it black, Nintendo! Most of the complaints I read about this guy boiled down to just 3 things. That they thought his hair was out of place, especially by way of coloring, that the design was too plain, and that they wished the design leaned further into the rockabilly look. My first draft, ugly duckling. My second draft, I'm kinda really proud of this guy. I kinda think I nailed it. I added a couple stripes to his chest since so many rockabillys have those striped shirts, or at least that's what Google Images makes me believe. I made the shapes on his hair more in line with his feathers. I puffed up the feathers at the top of his jacket a bit, and I changed his eyes just a tad. I like him. Thank you. So that's the first batch done. Let's carry on with more grading results. While I was reading through as many of the responses as I could out of the total almost 5,000, there was no earthly way to read all of them and still get this video out in December. There were a lot of responses that I either figured I'd see or didn't really surprise me all that much. Things like there being a very clear trend of people disliking designs that leaned more humanoid, especially when those humanoid-looking Pokemon were based on 4-legged animals. That's no surprise. People tend to be especially critical towards more plain designs, or designs that took very few liberties from their inspiration. That's no surprise. But the range of opinions for what exactly made for a good evolution design were really interesting. Like, there's been consistent criticism for when people think an evolution's design is too far removed from its original form, or criticism for when they aren't different enough. From what I can tell, most people lean towards disliking too much change. It wasn't uncommon for me to find short answer responses that basically didn't like a design because what they wanted from the evolution was the pre-evolution but bigger. Which is interesting because I think generally that's something that Pokemon tries to avoid doing, except for fucking Palmy, I guess, but whatever. It was also kind of surprising to see how much design clarity played into how much people liked it. Like, a lot of people didn't know what that thing on top of Crocalor's head was. A lot of people didn't know what the ice on Frigibax's chin was supposed to be. A lot of people didn't know what Varoom and Revavroom were. And when people didn't understand what they were looking at, they tended to lean more negative. What surprised me the most, though, was how harsh a lot of responses got to the designs that they perceived to be uninspired. People really like Pokemon that are rooted in some real animal, or real science, or established mythical creatures, established folklore, real dynamics in the animal kingdom, stuff like that. And there's a lot of people who, if they don't get that in a Pokemon design, they're disappointed in it. That's fine. I think that's perfectly valid criticism and perfectly valid as a preference. I'd say generally that's how I feel as well. It was just so interesting to me how often I would see comments that didn't recognize the inspiration for a Pokemon design, so they came to the conclusion that there is no inspiration. Therefore, that is why they don't like it. And I think it's especially interesting to me because my first thought is, well, how often have I done that? Because I'm sure I have. Funny, quirky little thing that people do. Between this and people not liking plainer animal designs, I think it says a lot about what people want out of Pokemon. You know, people want a fantastical fantasy creature that they haven't exactly seen before, but is still familiar. Just not too familiar or too unfamiliar. I'm not exactly sure what to do with this information. It's very vague, and it's hard to act on because people's opinions are so varied. You know, what makes for a fun, fantastical design and concept for one person, another person's not gonna like anyway. But now I'm ready to carry on with the redesigns. This time we have Rellor, Palafin, Varoom, Revavroom, and Flamigo. Rellor had a lot of funny comments to go through. Basically whatever people had to say about this guy, it was gonna be animated. Lots of howling laughter that Pokemon had the balls to make a dung beetle mon. Lots of grossing out over the exact same thing. I think because this guy is so small and most of his body is hiding behind his giant dirt ball, that also dissuaded people. It's not often we get a Pokemon design where the focal point isn't the Pokemon, but the people who did go out of their way to get a better look at him had problems with the colors and with his face. On his own, he looked too much like a normal bug to people. His nose looks like Squidward dick. The pink face is jarring against the dull brown body. The patterns on the balls didn't make sense to people. And just a note for me personally, his big lip thing terrifies me. Terrifies me. I know in-universe, Rellor's ball is made out of dirt and sand and psychic energy, but it looks ambiguous enough that people thought it was still a ball of shit, and a lot of people were really grossed out by that. So I tried to make a design where Rellor wasn't completely hidden behind the ball, and I tried out the idea of making his ball out of various minerals instead of dirt and sand, which, I mean, are minerals, but like, so I could get in some grays and blacks and like call them different kinds of rocks. Rocks and mud and dirt and sand. And hopefully this would make it more visually obviously not dung, but like obviously still based on a dung beetle? Question mark, tilt my head. I mostly just tried to rearrange his face shapes a bit, and I thought having him stand on top of his ball was a fun juxtaposition to Rabsca being upside down and underneath it after the evolution. Normal to abnormal type beat. Palafin, Hero Form Palafin, he was one of the designs that I desperately wanted redone, but I had no idea what I would actually do for it because I don't even know where to begin with my thoughts on his hero form. And a lot of the comments shared the sentiment. People not liking how anthropomorphized it was a given, but a lot of the feedback were people going, huh? Ew, and leaving it there. I was largely on my own for a while figuring out what to do with him. Actually, the most common feedback I had by far was that he reminded people of that creepy clown Poplio final fake Evo from years back, you know the one. So I tried a few different drafts, playing with various degrees of being not completely anthro, but also maybe not completely a dolphin either. I also tried taking that loopy pattern that's on the side of Finazin and Palafin's Zero form to make a sort of utility belt for the hero form, just to have some sort of continuity in the designs. And I did all of this before I looked at the second poll results, where I was then informed that people also really didn't like his eyes. Not something I picked up on from the first poll. But even with both polls now and all those results, I was still very stumped, so I deferred to Patreon. They told me that even if they didn't like the anthro aspects of the original Palafin hero form, people really liked the energy. You know, the charisma, the personality of it. And a lot of people wanted a cape. They also didn't like my utility belt, said it was too much. I agree. I don't like it on Finizen either, but oh well. I started planning on the final design with this kind of feedback in mind. I kept the utility belt idea, but I super simplified the shapes. Maybe they still kind of offer some kind of continuity, but like, it's still different. I gave him a cape. I kept him a dolphin that didn't stand, but I still gave him like a big meaty hero's chest for his heart logo to adorn. And then I gave him some particularly flexible flippers instead of making them into hands. I had to end up redoing his final art because I'd completely forgotten to try and emulate the official render art as much as I could for the pose. But otherwise, I feel like this went pretty okay. Neither the original nor my redesign much strike me as a Pokemon, but I am a little happier with the silhouette on my version, and I think he looks a little less like rubber? That's what the original one makes me feel like. I don't know. What do you guys think? With Varoom and Revavroom, I gave up. I really set out with every intention to redo these guys. I had a lot of actually really solid feedback on them. A lot of people commenting on confusion over seeing these two floating, not liking the rocks being incorporated as wheels even though they don't use them, being confused by the purple patterns. A lot of good feedback. But the main thing I read that people didn't like was that they didn't know what they were supposed to be. They're car engines, specifically a single-cylinder and a multi-cylinder engine. And I really tried. I tried to look up everything I could about these kinds of engines. I tried to get help from my friends looking up stuff about these kinds of engines. I'm mainly very confused. I don't know if maybe I was looking in the wrong place or looking up the wrong things, but I feel like every single engine I saw looked completely different. I'm not a car person. I don't recognize any of these shapes. Even just thinking about redesigning Varoom and Revavroom fills me with so much sympathy for the actual design team. Because I think doing a car engine Pokemon was going to be a really hard task from the start. Congrats to them on doing their best. I certainly couldn't have done it. I salute you, but me, there's literally nothing I can do here. I'm sorry, I'm skipping. Which brings us to Flamigo. I was a bit of a dumbass here. I messed up on the grading, and I forgot to include him in my list of 4 stars when I was first making that list. So for a while, I didn't realize I was supposed to redesign him, and he wasn't included in my second poll. Which is unfortunate, because 99% of the feedback I got for him on the first poll was just, it's just a flamingo. And I'm not kidding. Just scrolling through like bars and bars of it's just a flamingo. Incredibly unhelpful stuff. Very funny though. So I didn't have much to work with aside from the litany of people who think that Flamigo is too simple. I agree personally. I'm not exempt from wanting my Pokemon to be a little more fantastical than Flamigo is. But this guy kicked up so much discourse online. There's a lot of people who really like him and will fight to the death about liking his design. Power to you guys. And the fact that there were so many people that really appreciated his simplicity was something that I wanted to keep in mind. So what I did was really simple. Not much of a redesign at all, honestly. Very small changes. People have pointed out that its body looks like a stylized boxing glove. I think it looks like a stylized bird body. But if I give him a fighting stance where like one of his wings comes out like a fist, then maybe the boxing glove might be a little more obvious. That's really just like a stance change though. Redesign-wise, all I did was give it a touch of white on its belly to add something to it so it didn't just look like regular flamingo coloring. And then I made 3 alternate colorways corresponding to Tatsugiri. I thought it might be a little fun if they could come in an assortment of colors. You know, like flamingos are pink because of their diet. We already have a Pokemon in this generation with a gimmick for appearing in different colors and being eaten. I don't know. Made sense to me. This brings us to our final grading section. We still have a few more redesigns to do, but the video's pretty much over once I finish those, so I'd like to take this time to talk about my main takeaways from doing this community-driven project. For one, the customer isn't always right. There were a lot of comments that made suggestions for design changes that I was positive would have made the designs worse. And if I had taken every popular design modification on board, I would have ended up with something that would have been impossible to read as anything, let alone a Pokemon. I don't think this was an efficient way of approaching doing redesigns at all, but it was fun. I feel like at the end of the day, this wasn't about really improving the original designs, despite it being what I set out to do in the first place. It's really just more of a fun experiment. Honestly, I might want to do more videos like these where I go into previous Pokemon generations and just redesign entirely based off what the comments ask for. It's fun. I don't know what you want from me, it's fun. The other big takeaway I had from this video is a renewed appreciation for artistic integrity. Designing things based on wide appeal was fun, but it's not sustainable or realistic. It's an impossible task to make things universally appealing. It's very time-consuming to take on so much feedback, and there's no guarantee that changing things based on mass opinion will even lead to an improvement. There were a lot of times where I struggled to design things to other people's tastes when they didn't suit my own, and looking back on it now, I think they weren't that much better for it. Having to try and put my personal tastes to the side to design something for other people was really difficult. And as much fun as I had, I can't say I'm proud of these designs like I'm proud of some of my original works. Not that I'm ashamed of them by any means, but there's a disconnect. I don't feel connected to these designs. I'm very neutral about them. And I feel like it's super important for artists to be able to get really invested in and take pride in their work. There's going to be people out there who won't like something that you've made that you put your whole soul into. But I think those people not liking it hurts a lot less than how good it feels to make something that you are happy with. So I think at the end of the day, it's way more important that the Pokemon designers are happy with what they've made, way more than it matters if I like it. So even if I'm still not into a lot of the Galar and Paldea dexes, I have come out of this video feeling a lot more positively about not liking them, if that makes sense. Now let's finish this off. Our last redesigns will be Frigibax, Arctibax, and Gholdengo. These two redesigns were the ones that made me think the most. Like the kinda, ooh, I'm so reflective and the world's so magical kind of thinking. With the entire Baxcalibur line, a lot of people were upset about the colors, especially the warm accent color spike things on their hands. A lot of people thought Frigibax was too far removed from the rest of the line. A lot of people shouting that they think he's ugly all around. I get it, he's a little weirdo. With Arctibax, people didn't like how simple the design was, and the smoothness of the body and the head versus the sharp ice beak mouth beard thing. I can also get that. And then there was a good mix of comments from people who either didn't understand what this line was trying to be, and then people who called it just Godzilla. So what I'm gathering from that is that people wanted more. Initially, I tried to keep the accent color spikes in because personally that was my favorite part of the original designs. I had it in my head that maybe if I could make the design look better, then people would be able to appreciate the accent colors. But especially while going over the results of the second poll, I realized that that's just not what this video is about. People wanted the accent claws gone. They really wanted them gone. I goned them. And instead tried replacing them with ice that was slowly creeping over its body. I thought that might help the design feel more. Like there was fun fantasy stuff going on here, or that it wasn't just Godzilla. So I went to grab some references of other Pokemon that had ice as part of their design. There weren't many at all, and they were very spread out over the generations. So I ended up with this really clear example of the Pokemon style evolving over time that I hadn't really noticed before. I had it in my head that it all started with Galar, but clearly that's not true. I don't know. I think that's cool. I need to take some time studying each gen individually after this video to really see how one changes from the next. Because I think because I grew up with it, that I just didn't notice a lot of these things. How much have I not noticed? I ended up taking most of my ice rendering inspiration from Regice, but I made a point to have Frigibax's ice look nice and smooth, almost soft, like it's barely frozen. And then I made the ice much harder and sharper when it evolved. And I think that gives the line almost like a story. I think it's fun. And I even think that these would probably be a good example of how not every aspect we appreciate in Pokemon designs can be translated well into 3D. You know, it's the reason that people recommend that you not judge how a Pokemon is designed just based on the game when it releases. The differing details in the ice aren't so obvious in 3D models as they are in the official renders. I just think that's neat. I ended up with 2 designs very far removed from Baxcalibur, so I was prepared to tell you guys to just use your imaginations as to what the Baxcalibur might look like. Invite you guys to try designing your own, maybe, to match my redesigns. I don't know. But one of my patrons, CMY Cades, actually did some drawovers on the works in progress I had posted to give me some suggestions, and I took a lot of inspiration from their notes for Frigibax and Arctibax. So just for fun and to say thanks, I asked him to redesign Baxcalibur for me. I didn't ask him to use the community feedback like I did. This was just 100% his own ideas. He made the design and then I rendered it out so we could have the whole gang together. Consider this just kind of a bonus one. And please check out Cade's art. His stuff is incredible. We are finally down to the last one, Gholdengo. I didn't want to be drawing this guy so goddamn bad. Oh, this one sucked. Ladies and gentlemen, the only other 3-star design, and fun fact, the only Pokemon in all of Paldea in my poll that had the majority vote being the single most negative one. Gholdengo was another case like Flamigo, where most of the feedback I got for him was entirely unhelpful. But I can't really blame anyone because I don't know what the fuck to say about this design either. It's pretty bizarre by Pokemon standards, to say the least. People had the easiest time saying this one didn't look like a Pokemon to them. Personally, I think he looks like an NPC you would see in a putt-putt game. Not changing the concept made redesigning this guy really fucking hard though, because I get why they did what they did. It's literally the coin entity Pokemon. The shapes are all made up to look like stacked coins. I get why he's so cylindrical. I just couldn't really find a way to make a coin entity that looked different enough from this guy that wouldn't also have the issue of not looking like a Pokemon. So the best thing I thought I could do was to lean into the mimic side of things. I rendered him with the coin tongue, but I like to imagine that it can also easily be a hand, like in my other concept sketches. It's just a bunch of coins stuck together. It stands to reason they can change the shape they form. I don't hate what I came up with, but I'll be honest, I do feel like I kinda gave up with it and just did the best I could with what I had, because redesigning this guy was both not easy and also not all that enjoyable. What a way to end. Not with a bang, but with a pathetic little whimper. But yes, that was my final redesign. I think I did like 11 in total. This took way too long. Here they are. I hope you like them. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons for helping me troubleshoot so many of these designs. I got a good amount of help from them. Couldn't have done it without them. Some of them drew some things to give me some notes, showing those on screen now. Thank you guys, mwah. Thanks to everyone who took their time to respond to my polls and wrote out all those short answer sections. This was way more work than a typical redesign would be. Way too much reading. But I had a lot of fun with it. I really might want to do other videos like this in the future, so keep your eyes peeled for more polls, I suppose. And thank you again to my patrons so much for supporting me. $2 a month gets you access to all the works in progress for my various projects that I post there. $5 gets you access to the patron exclusive streams I do every month. And $10 gets your name read at the end of my videos just like this. Thank you so much to Morgan Shadow Squatter, Orion Pax, Moth Knock Your Socks Off, Wishy Moose, Turtle Sushi, Scarab, Wing Wing, Sarah Medina, Ash Falling, Davey, Danny's, Mogumi, Kyra Ross, Tosertv, Aki, Komodori, Number 1 Morag Late Ladare Simp, Harris the Rat King, Alpha Aurigay, Alpha AC Roberts, Luxtorium, Wesley Mabane, QB, Darkheart, Blue, Jade Warlock, Dewdrops, Evie-chan, Beetlesticks, Christina Rispetto, Caster, Pebbly T, Ursula 707, Data Fox, Oliver Ruiz, Jaxel Berry, Lainey Montz, Pixie Princess, Kaji Purin, Chase, River Pancakes, Boots and Cats, C Row 3, Coca, Ashley T, Crumminoid, Bubbleberry, Via V Velvy B, Natalia the Reeton 73, Freaking It, Miss Manic Panic, 360 Ieva Boy, Bessa Luis, The Name's Raymond, Aaron the Confused, Betray, Arcadichu, Hellpup, Scissor Reaper, Tabby Laffy Annie, Sunnyside Up, Sketchy Beats, Rayleigh Sheridan, Fawn Draven, Retrofawn, Midge Mayhem, Issa-Me, Marie, Oculus Portfolio, Marplease, Summer Stars, Pancake Pearlchan, Nabura, Sushi McNushi, Pasiga Inkblood, Jesper Barrel Alabaster, Solix, Pan Con Queso, Gabriel Klinner, Sailor Starbones, Aria Days, Andy, Harpo the Marks, Charlie the Kitten, Ambit Bunny, Talia Griffin, Bookbound, Dreamy Loomy, Twisted Mind, River Mori, Wet Sock of Pain, Ace, Shmo, Shrimpy Boy, Bo Cinnabarol, Claire AD, King Jester, Mochi Mercy, Moon Pie Dumpling, Jamie Cloud, Sakura Love, Larice, Dahlia Dreamcraft, Sirius Star, Thessisile, Rainy's Corner, Kyle James Taylor, Creepy LPS 44, Blazing Locust, Starry Night, Snail, Devin J. Allen, Dogger, Connor Robinson, Nikolai Galagaxian, Honeybeast, Fond Envy, Sithari Chaos, Martin Anderson, Jalen, Rhododendron Cat, Eddie Star, Bread, Enma Baby, EC Art, Goji Dragon, Vendetta, Chaosu, Popsicle Personify, Cactus Princess, Tazara, Starling Studio, Mia Bear Mallow, Leon Dexter, Rudio, Faithums, Your Resident Disney Princess, PTR Draws, Fool on Cool, The Crystal Paladin, G, Damn Creativity, SL Emmy, Mim Silvernote, Ovive, CJ Duffy, Sweetly Sinstra, Strawberry Kitty, The Sleepy Detective, Mark Delark, Bunny Boy, LiuBZ, Exorcist Lilum, Gravity Drop, Sammy Sammer, Miss Contrary, Glasses Protag, Mist, Queen Sunoco, Night King, Sunset Lemonade, Philip the Yoke, Sunny Bear Boy, Melvonics, V. Rogers Art, Kamiki Miata, Red V, Nate Art, Young Nanner, Shards of Shattered Space, Gremlin, Abigail Wargo, Thyla Scream. It's fucking windy! I try to fight. Cloud Axolotl 107, Mario Medina, Zephyr Christos, Krimskoy, Sholia, Ghostly Goat, Karina Floraline, Ali Mocha, Raven Trull, Kitty Freak, Giltice, Phantom Bagel, Zachary Borgs, Jake Van True, Madison, Dragon Draws, Nyx Flames, Stymphalion, Kyger, Capri Crocker, Basically BB, Monster Freak, The Legend of Alice, Danny Glitter, White Rhino 2222, Johnny Ariano, Rain Jake, Luna Lu the Mew, Boring Studios, Luna Yoku, Daphne Jolly, Nyan Pasu, Eggoat, Gallivanting Galliforms, Inger Lease, Sean M, Jordan Ripley, Dusk, Wetix Knife. I definitely said that wrong still. Bo, how do I say it? Thunder Evermore, Orion of the Stars, D. Henry, Mama Peaches, Michael Sasha Rose, Fire Newt 451, Madu, Minnow Candy, Berserker 102, Michael, Emiraki, Yakmo Soul Queen, Cat Dagger 2, Comet Tail, Schooly Sweet, Winrin, Jacob Goodwin, DJ Cat Meow, Clamunch, Embla, Fields of Starlight, Project Empty Reen 5, Sweet Kitsu, Scriblet, Codal Cuddles, Jakey Jellybean, Womelsdorf Art, Lauren, Chiorio, Dylan MX, Malochu, Seb, Alien Drag Queen, Caller 3 Tora, Shortcake Snake, Andre, Dojo Kid, Mukichigo, Nikozawa, Nightmage EXP, Zelphus, Pussy, Makaru, Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Dust Munchies, Russell the Jimmies, Nikos Darcy, Andrew Robinson, Chris Daru, Kurt Coolman, Cody Richard, Rasuri Ann, Hikari Yu, Johnny Stars, Kara Stark Strange, Peachy Mint, Ashfear, and Aswix. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you later. I'll see you next year. Bye!